Welcome to the Stronger Than Steel podcast with your host, Austin Davidson and John Keir, talking Steelers all the time. Now, here's Austin and John.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Stronger Than Steel podcast. I'm Austin Davidson, and today I'm going to be on my own. John couldn't make it for today's podcast, but it is okay. He'll likely be available on Twitter tomorrow to voice some inputs during the game, maybe after the game. We'll see. Let's start off with some Steelers news today, as the Steelers go into Indianapolis to take on the Colts. First off, the Steelers signed to Gray Scales to the active roster and have cut Derwin Gray in a quite baffling decision, to say the least. They've also elevated Matthew Wright from the practice squad. Cutting Derwin Gray is quite interesting decision when he made your offense a lot better last week compared to J.C. Hassenauer. I understand you needed to make room, but it just felt like the wrong decision. You can't cut J.C. Hassenauer because he's your backup center, and that is not what Derwin Gray is there for. Derwin Gray is a tackle/guard, sort of like Chris Hubbard was. So I understand not being able to cut Hassenauer, but I find that cutting him was a mistake. I mean, I feel like Antoine Brooks hasn't been used as an inside linebacker as much. That's been what his position is, but I mean with all the injuries, he hasn't really even played. I felt like if you really felt like you need another inside linebacker, you should have just cut Antoine Brooks. He hasn't even been getting playing time with all that injury. I felt like he was a guy that could go. But I mean, I guess it is what it is. Hopefully Derwin Gray circles back because I'd like to see him back on the practice squad. But I will not be surprised if Cincinnati takes him in about 3 seconds. Cincinnati scooped up Fred Johnson. Cincinnati came after B.J. Finney. They're going to make a whole Steelers offensive line as backups there because their offensive line is so bad. But really, Derwin Gray looked like he proved some stuff last game. It's kind of baffling that they decided to cut him now. Other moves the Steelers made throughout the week. The Steelers cut Christian Kuntz and signed Kevin Rader to the practice squad. Christian Kuntz might circle back. We'll have to see because he immediately, 2 days later, had a visit with the Steelers, officially, in quotation marks. So he's still hanging around. He might be coming back to the practice squad. Then UG3, or Ulysses Gilbert III, has been placed on IR for the second time this year. This ends his season. Because he's been placed on IR twice now, he is no longer eligible to return, even if the Steelers make it that far in the playoffs. So just keep that in mind. Vince Williams' roster exemption was lifted, and that fills that spot. So there's that. Last bit of I'm sorry. There's one more bit of Steelers news after this. For the Pro Bowl, the rosters have been announced. 5 Steelers have made it, including 4 starters. Cameron Hayward, T.J. Watt, Minka Fitzpatrick, and Marquise Pouncey are starters, and then David DeCastro was selected as a backup. Hayward, Watt, and Minka Fitzpatrick are definitely deserving. The Pouncey and David DeCastro picks are a little bit head-scratching. Pouncey is okay. I mean, he definitely hasn't been himself this season, but I wouldn't have picked him as a Pro Bowler, never mind the starting center. And the same with David DeCastro. David DeCastro is just sitting at okay, and I wouldn't have picked him for the Pro Bowl either. He just made it. He's a backup, but this was a little bit head-scratching. I feel like this was mostly fan-oriented. It's kind of funny. Cameron Canaday didn't make it even though the fans chose him as the best long snapper. The way that the Pro Bowl works is a third of the votes come from the fans, a third of the votes come from the players, and a third of the votes come from the coaches. So apparently the coaches and players decided that Cameron Canaday was not a good enough long snapper, despite leading his position in fan votes. So that was interesting, but I'm not sure Canaday deserved it either. But I just wanted to mention that. But yeah, so the Steelers have 5 Pro Bowlers as it sits now. Obviously, the Pro Bowl is not happening like normal. They're having a little bit of some Zoom stuff going on from what I heard. We'll have to see what goes on with that. I think it'll be interesting. I kind of like this idea. I like to know more about the players. I hope I get to see the players doing some silly stuff like maybe playing Jeopardy or something. I don't know what we're really going to see. I just know that it's going to be on Zoom. I like to know more about the players on a personal level. But yeah. The last bit of news, and this is unfortunate news, but the death of Kevin Green. Kevin Green passed away, unfortunately, a few days ago, and he was only in his late 50s. He apparently was in a workout and had a heart attack shortly after. He's a Steelers legend, a Panthers legend, a Packers legend for being a coach during the Super Bowl, and more than that, he was a great man. He was really well loved in the organization, and it's unfortunate that we had to see him pass away at such a young age. So, I mean, rest in peace to him, and our condolences to the family. With that being said, let's head into the actual game. And we'll start with the injury report. So, Marcus Allen with a stinger, Ola Adeniyi with a shoulder, and Chris Boswell with a groin have all been downgraded to out on Saturday. They were all questionable on Friday, but they are not playing. This is why Matthew Wright was elevated, and unfortunately, the Steelers are running very thin at linebacker, as you can see. Mostly inside linebacker, but outside linebacker is taking its hits as well. Then Anthony McFarland with an illness is questionable after being added to the report on Friday as a non-participant. Basically, we're just hoping he doesn't have Ronies, which it's not likely that he does. He should be good to go for this game if they choose to make him active. They might be careful and not play him, though, because they have James Conner back. We'll have to see. Now for the Colts have their own share of problems here. Starting right tackle Braden Smith was placed on the COVID reserve list on Christmas Day. He will be out for this game. He is not eligible. He tested positive. Then today, or Saturday, the next day, their starting left tackle Anthony Costanzo was downgraded to out for this game. So they're now down both their starting left tackle and right tackles in this game. And figuring out on Twitter, their third string tackle, who was supposed to be the backup, has been placed on IR earlier in the year. So they're relying on fourth and fifth strings here, sort of like we're at inside linebacker. So they are sharing their own injuries, and that's not ideal when you have to face TJ Watt. I mean, Alex Highsmith is unproven, but facing TJ Watt is going to be tough without your starting tackles. And I mean, we have really good edge rushers as well. It's not just Watt. Cameron Hayward's really good, and Stephon Tuitt. So watch out for the edge in this game. Then also Marcus Johnson with a quadriceps injury, he is out, and defensive end Al Quadon Muhammad with an ankle injury is questionable. Muhammad was a full participant on Friday and should be good to go for this game. I don't expect him to be set back. So, talking about the series history between the Colts, Pittsburgh has dominated the Colts in the past. The all-time series is set at 25-6 in favor of Pittsburgh, and what's it called? The current streak, the last result was 26-24 Pittsburgh, barely itching by. I'm pretty sure the Colts started 17-0 in that game, and Pittsburgh battled back to win 26-24 against the Jacoby Brissett-led Colts, and the current streak is set as 6 straight wins for Pittsburgh. And the postseason record is 5-0 against them, 3-0 as the Indianapolis Colts, and 2-0 as the Baltimore Colts. And the fun fact for this game is that in the last 5 games against the Colts, Ben Roethlisberger is 5-0 and has posted an average of 341.4 passing yards, 3.2 touchdowns, 0.4 interceptions, and 0.8 sacks per game in that stretch against them. He's had a really good time, really, really good time against the Colts in the past. And we mentioned on the last podcast, but he threw 6 touchdown passes against them not too long ago. I mean, it feels pretty long ago now, but yeah. Now, going to the actual game, do I want to start with offense or do I want to start with defense? Well, you know what? Let's do this differently. I want to start by comparing offense to offense and defense to defense. Normally, I'll talk about defense versus our offense or so on and so forth, but let's do it differently. I want to talk about the defenses and the offenses because they're kind of similar. Not entirely on the offenses, but on the defensive side, the Colts are a very similar team to the Steelers, whereas they're very well built as a defense. They're very good in turnovers. In fact, I believe they're second in turnovers in the league, only behind Pittsburgh. No, that's not true. I'm sorry. They are third with 24. They have 24 turnovers. So the Steelers are in second with 25. So they're one behind. Their defense has a pretty decent amount of sacks and stuff. So they're actually average in sacks. But regardless, Their defense has been really good this year. They've had a resurgence from Xavier Rhodes, which has helped. I would have never thought this. I thought Xavier Rhodes was burnt toast. I thought he was over with his last year with the Vikings. He's resurged. Rocky Sin, an old prospect I looked at. He has been really good for them. DeForest Buckner, a guy that I wasn't really super high on. I felt like a lot of people were higher than they should be. He's been really good. I think that he was worth that first round pick. You're not going to get a better pass rusher than DeForest Buckner, really with that first round pick, but he's been really good. Justin Houston's been chilling with the Colts for a while now. He's still solid. Not what he used to be when he was a Chief in his early years, but he's still providing good help. And overall, the Colts just have a really solid defense. It's just built very well. You have Darius Leonard in the middle, and he is one of the best inside linebackers in the game. Racks up tackles. He fills up holes so quick, and it's part of the reason why they have been a really good team against the run. Their rush yards per game is fifth in the NFL. They're only giving up 98.1 yards per game in the rushing, and when the Steelers aren't rushing, I mean, it doesn't really matter because the Steelers basically are going to suck at rushing regardless, but I mean, you could tell why with how good their defensive line has played and how good their linebackers have played, and they have good cornerbacks. Their safeties are decent. I'm not crazy about them, but I mean, they've been playing good enough where they're a really good defense. I mean, you just look at it all together, and they're just producing. And even when they're not producing, they're forcing turnovers or opportunistic. They're kind of giving up a decent amount of points per game. They're giving up about 23 points per game, but they're getting turnovers to make up for it, and that's putting them in a good position, and it's allowed their offense to be a pretty high-scoring offense on the other side, where they're putting up 28.5 points per game, which is 8th in the league. So, overall, their defense is very similar to the Steelers. The Steelers obviously are going to be without a few pieces in this game. They're going to be without Marcus Allen. They're going to be without Ola Adaney, but those guys are kind of just backups. Marcus Allen was stepping up pretty good, but now you have Vince Williams back. Vince Williams being back is huge for this team because Vince Williams and Avery Williamson would be a really solid pairing, in my opinion. I think that it's going to help with how the Steelers perform against Jonathan Taylor, who's been coming on hot. I think that he's been a really good back over the past couple weeks. He had some pretty big games, but I think the difference is those games came against some really bad run defenses. I mean, fantasy-wise, like Houston and oh my gosh, who did they play last week? I can't off the top of my head, I can't remember. But fantasy-wise, they were like ranked like the bottom 3 in the league, and he was able to really rush on them. The Steelers are a little bit better. The Steelers, I wish, had their inside linebacker core completely okay, so that with that meaning that Robert Spillane was there, so you could rotate Vince Williams, Robert Spillane, Avery Williamson. What's funny is Vince Williams would probably be the one rotating out because Vince Williams doesn't wear the green dot. With Avery Williamson wearing the green dot now, you're likely to see Avery Williamson stay in on a lot more plays and Vince Williams to come out for Robert Spillane. But it gives you that rest period where now you're kind of stuck with, if you're taking Vince Williams out, you're putting a guy like Tegray Scales in or Antoine Brooks, and that's, not ideal. So I wish it was a little bit better, but I still think that our defensive line is the best in the league. I mean, you have Tyson Alualu, who's been amazing against the run. Cameron Hayward's been a beast. I mean, people still sleep on him. I was having a conversation with a Jets fan. He was like, Quinnen Williams should have made it over Cameron Hayward. Just look at the stats. And I'm like, dude, you've never watched Cameron Hayward in your life, and it shows. Because Cameron Hayward might not be putting up the craziest stats this year, but Mans is providing pressure. He's strong at the line of scrimmage, and he's just overall a really great player. And oh wow, I'm sorry, I'm watching the Oakland game as I'm doing this, and Nelson Aguilar just absolutely destroyed a Dolphins cornerback. That was insane. Sorry, if you guys are watching this later, it is now 22-16. That's the point I'm talking about. But that was insane. I had to take a break to say something about that. But yeah, back to what I was saying about the Steelers defensive line. Stephon Tuitt is awesome as well, and it's just they're so good. One other thing I wanted to mention about about the Chiefs is that Kenny Moore. Kenny Moore is a really good cornerback too. Kenny Moore, I like him, and I like their pass rush. I feel like they should have more sacks because I like Anthony Walker and I like Danico Autry. I think they've just been banged up a little bit more there, but regardless, I think I said enough about the defenses. I mean, I really didn't mention the Steelers cornerbacks or anything, but that's just because there's not really much to say. They're really good cornerbacks. You're finally healthy. You got Joe Hayden, you got Steven Nelson, you got Mike Hilton for this game. It should be solid. The one thing you're worried about is T.Y. Hilton has, along with Jonathan Taylor, has gotten pretty hot over the past few weeks, and it's the right time for them, but you're hoping that it doesn't stay that way against the Steelers. Again, he hasn't been versing the best cornerbacks in the world. The Texans cornerbacks have been really busted up and banged up since they lost Bradley Roby, but I think that they should be able to contain him. Michael Pittman Jr. has been really solid for them, and Zach Pascal just had a 2-touchdown game last game. He's a sneaky guy. He usually has a really good game here and there, so there's that. So, but I think the cornerbacks can handle them, and the safeties have been playing at a really good level. Minka Fitzpatrick hasn't been tackling very well, but his coverage is still very good. He's not being targeted still, and people again are undermining him because they watch him fail to tackle like once, and they're like, "Wow, he's so bad," even though like he doesn't get targeted because his coverage is insane. And Terrell Edmonds has improved a lot this year. He's taken a big step forward. His tackling is almost perfect. Not completely. We saw him get burnt like 2 weeks ago on a bad tackle, but he's getting better, and his coverage has gotten a lot better too. So I feel like overall the Steelers should be okay in that regard. I'm just hoping T.Y. Hilton doesn't continue going off. Now let's talk about our offense, and our offense is in a bad spot. Our offense hasn't been putting up against bad defenses. Our offense has been putting up against good defenses. Our bad offense hasn't been putting up against injured defenses, and that's a struggle here. You're not going to have a good time against the Colts team that is so good at forcing turnovers. They might not be their strength might be in the run department, which actually plays to Steelers' benefits. If you can't run in the anyway, regardless of what team you're playing, it doesn't really help a team if they're better in stopping the run, because the Steelers are basically going to perform just as bad as usual. So it is good that their pass defense isn't the best, but what's really concerning is that they are still an opportunistic defense. Like, they have 15 interceptions on the year, and it's affecting the defensive stats. They've been really good against the pass in that regard. So, I mean, they're ranked 17th in pass yards per game, but if they're getting interceptions and Ben hasn't been throwing to the wide open guys and he's been throwing into coverage, they're going to get them. Not only that, they've been forcing fumbles. They got the 9 fumbles forced from the year, which is really solid. It's like up there with the Ravens. Not quite as good because the Ravens are literally insane at doing that, but they're forcing fumbles, and when you have guys like Deontay Johnson, Juju Smith-Schuster have been really struggling, and James Conner, because he's been injured, hasn't really gotten his chance, but I feel like every year James Conner has at least like one bad fumble. You have to watch out for that. I think that the offense is really going to struggle here, especially combined with the wide receivers are going against some really solid cornerbacks. They have 3 really solid cornerbacks in Kenny Moore, in Xavier Rhodes, and then in Rock Ya-Sin. So it's going to be really, really tough for the Steelers to deal with that. I also like TJ Carey coming in occasionally. He's not very good, but I like him as a rotational piece. But still, I worry about that, because when you have 3 good cornerbacks to cover your 3 wide receivers that you're using most of the time, it's just not very good. And then you have Darius Leonard, who's been really good field general, who can be on Eric Ebron or Vance McDonald if it's necessary. And he could, I feel like he could even line up against running backs, like out of the backfield in man coverage. So he's really good as well. It's going to be tough. It's going to be tough for the offense in this game. I'm not sure they get it going in this game when they couldn't do it against the Washington football team. I caught myself. And then they couldn't do it against the injured, really bad Bengals defense. Like, that was really pathetic last week. It was awful. If they get it together in this game, I'm going to be massively surprised on the offensive side. I think that the defense side is going to carry this because uh, I know that people have been saying Philip Rivers has been playing pretty good this year. He's only okay to me still. Even when you look at his stats, even when you watch him play, he's only okay. He makes a lot of bad reads at times. I mean, it was mostly in the beginning of the year, but he still makes some bad reads. And when you're playing against a defense like this, when he hasn't been playing against a defense like this, I think that the Steelers are going to get a turnover. But who knows? They weren't able to get a turnover against Ryan Finley-led Bengals last week, so who even knows, honestly? What's it called? Um. Oh wow, this Raiders game is insane. This Raiders game is actually insane. Myles Gaskin is nuts. I think you guys know where I'm at, but I have to. Oh man, sorry, I had to take a break for that because I'm trying to keep up so that when we get to the pick'em section, I can talk about it. But regardless, Philip Rivers is just not very good, and now I'm looking at both starting tackles being out against the Steelers pass rush. That's tough. That is very, very tough. TJ Watt going up against a fourth or fifth stringer shouldn't be happening, and that's what is going to be happening in this game. Highsmith has been waiting too. Highsmith's been getting pressure at a high rate. He's I feel like so far he's been really, really good. A lot of fans might not think so because they haven't seen him produce anything crazy. But besides that, uh, besides that, he's been really good at forcing pressure, and I think he's just right there. I feel like he's going to get the sack in this game, especially going against a guy that's considered at quote unquote his level, uh, in like a fourth or fifth string tackle here. Uh, I will say that Chaz Green has actually been playing okay for them since he's come on. I mean, he was really bad with the Cowboys, but I saw him play in one game for them. I think at swing tackle. Maybe he was actually just put into a starting role. Not sure, but he actually plays really really well in that one game. So that is something to watch out for. Maybe he'll step up. But overall, I think that this is going to be a defensive battle because I don't trust either offense in this game. I don't think that the Colts are prepared for the Steelers' defense like they have been prepared for other defenses. I mean, they've been putting up 26 points per game like the past couple of games, but I don't know if that continues here. But yeah, I feel like that's really all I have to say about this game. I think I covered it all that I wanted to talk about. Maybe John will come in on Twitter and say some other things if he has some other thoughts on this game. But yeah, that really wraps it up for me. So let's talk about the NFL, the rest of the NFL for Week 16. We saw on Friday, on Christmas Day, the Vikings at Saints. The Saints absolutely destroyed that game, and it hurt my feelings because guess why it hurt my feelings? I played Alvin Kamara in the only league I'm still alive in the championship game, and Alvin Kamara had a historic day that was basically he could have had an NFL historic day by setting a record for most touchdowns in a game, beating Gale Sayers with 7. But the Sean Payton decided to he decided to run with Taysom Hill on one of the attempts, so it took away one of Alvin Kamara's touchdowns. But still, Kamara had 6 rush touchdowns, which is the most in a game in NFL history, tied most with Gale Sayers. And really good. They won 52-33, which is also scoregami. So it was a really fun game in that regard, but because I played Alvin Kamara in fantasy, it hurt my feelings a lot. Then on Saturday, or today earlier, we saw the Buccaneers at the Lions, also a drubbing. We saw the Buccaneers win 47-7. Matt Stafford got hurt early. The offense didn't even look good before that. The Buccaneers literally had switched in their backups basically at halftime when they were up 34 points. Tough game for the Lions. The Lions are bad, and the Bucks. Everyone's like parading the Bucks like they could make it to the Super Bowl. This didn't impress me. Like this is the Lions we're talking about. I don't understand why the love for the Buccaneers comes because they beat a team by 40 points. Like they beat a really really poor team without Matthew Stafford by 40 points. Like all right, it's impressive to win by 40 points, but slow your roll. The Buccaneers haven't even been able to beat the Saints, who are already guaranteed to make the playoffs. So I don't understand the riding the Buccaneers to the Super Bowl bus that's been happening. Last game that actually ended that we could talk about is going to be the 49ers Cardinals games. Oh, by the way, follow us on Twitter at stronger_steel. We forgot to put our game picks on the last podcast, even though we recorded it last night. But we put it on Twitter, so that's how you know who we picked. And I picked San Francisco +5 in this game because I knew the NFC West is weird, and John picked the Cardinals to cover, and I was correct. I actually did not watch this game. I know that Kyler Murray threw an interception at the end of it, but other than that, I don't really know very much about it. But yeah. So moving on to the next set of games, and the first set of games, I've already mentioned it twice now because it's such a good game, is going to be the Dolphins and Raiders game. The Dolphins are currently up 23-22. The Dolphins are favored by 3 points in this game, and we both picked the Dolphins to cover, both me and John. So we'll see how that one plays out. Right now, it looks like the Dolphins will not cover because if they get the ball back, they're not likely to score. They're likely to have. I guess it depends. Las Vegas could kick a field goal, and then Miami can drive down and get a touchdown to end it. But that's not likely. They'll likely go down and kick a field goal if that's even what happens. But if they get the ball back and Raiders don't score, then Miami's definitely not covering because they'll run the clock out. Regardless, that's enough for that game. Sunday, 1 o'clock, the Falcons are at the Chiefs. Chiefs are favored by 10.5 points. That is way too low. Give me the Chiefs to cover, and John had the same thought process as he picked the Chiefs to cover. Now, Browns at Jets. This wasn't an interesting game until today. On Saturday, December 26th, the Browns placed B.J. Goodson, Jacob Phillips, Jarvis Landry, Donovan Peoples-Jones, Rashard Higgins, and Kadarius Hodge on the COVID reserve list. Ryan Switzer was already placed on the COVID reserve list earlier and is not eligible to come off for this game. At least I do not believe. They only have 3 wide receivers available for this game, and none of which have caught a pass as a Brown. Those 3 are Marvin Hall, Jamarcus Bradley, and Derek Willis. The last 2 of those are practice squad elevations. The Browns are still favored by 10, but they only had 1 wide receiver left on the active roster. It's lucky that he somehow stayed away from the rest of the wide receiver group. And luckily, Marvin Hall is actually pretty solid. He was with the Lions before getting cut. He literally had a 100-yard game, but he still has never caught a pass as a Brown, and they get no practice time. They're being thrown in there. Expect a lot of 2 tight end sets. Expect a lot of 2 running back sets because they have Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. They've been a very good rushing offense. They're probably going to attack this, but it made this game very, very, very interesting. Me and John are both picking the Jets +10 because the line didn't move for whatever reason, even though all those guys were ruled out. It's just there's a chance with the Browns being thin at inside linebacker and at wide receiver like that. That's pretty tough. I think the Jets could keep it within 10, because they really they got the Browns have a hand tied behind their back with all this. Now after that game we had the Bears at the Jaguars. The Bears are favored by 7.5 points. Jacksonville is going back to Mike Glennon instead of Gardner Minshew. They are embracing the tank. They want the Trevor Lawrence. They want the man from Clemson, the man himself. That being said, I'm picking the Bears to cover. The Bears aren't. The Mitchell Trubisky's actually been playing really solid since coming back in. I honestly think that if they let Mitchell Trubisky still rock, they might have one more win. But he's been really good, and they shouldn't lose to this Jaguars team. Their defense is really solid as well. So Bears cover, and John picked the same thing. Giants at Ravens. Baltimore is favored by 10.5 points. Both teams trying to keep their playoff hopes alive. If the Giants lose and the football team win, Giants are eliminated. I do not know the scenarios for the Ravens, but I know that them losing puts them in a really bad spot. They might be eliminated from the playoffs if that happens. I'm not sure, though. They might have to have other things happen, but both are playing for their lives in this game. Me and John both picked the Ravens to cover because they're just better. The Giants are playing for their playoff lives because their division sucks. Meanwhile, the Ravens are sitting at 9-5 and actually a decent team playing for their playoff hopes. So we're both picking them to cover. The Bengals at Texans. Houston's are favored by 7 points. Bengals are coming off a big win against the Pittsburgh Steelers, and the Texans are coming off a 7-point loss to the Colts. Give me the Texans to cover here, and John is going the same. I just think that last game was a fluke, and the Pittsburgh really just sucks. Like that game was Pittsburgh sucking more than the Bengals saying, this showing they have life. Give me the Texans to cover. Broncos at Chargers. Chargers are favored by 3 points. Give me the Chargers to cover. I think that the Broncos are in a really bad state at the moment, so I'm going to take them. John is going to be picking the Broncos +3. Panthers at Washington football team. Football team is favored by 2.5. Panthers been playing really bad as of late. They do not have Christian McCaffrey back for this game. I am picking Washington football to cover. I would be picking the Panthers if they had McCaffrey, but they do not. So I am picking the football team, and so is John. Eagles at Cowboys. Eagles are 2.5-point favorites. Jalen Hurts has been playing out of his mind. Like, he just started here, and he immediately had a nasty game against a not easy Cardinals defense. I will be picking the Eagles to cover here. I think that they're in a way better state with Hurts, who's more mobile than Wentz. So it makes it better when he doesn't have an offensive line that's good for blocking for him. And the Cowboys are in a really bad state despite winning 2 straight, I believe. If they won against the Bengals and then the 49ers, so I'm pretty sure they're on a 2-game winning streak. I think that comes crashing back down to earth. I'm picking the Eagles to cover. John is picking the Cowboys +2.5. Rams at Seahawks. Seattle's favored by 1 point. Rams took the first one in this matchup. I'm going to be picking the Seahawks to cover. It's kind of a toss-up game. The Rams are coming off a pretty bad loss to the Jets, so that's going to probably have them pissed off because before that, they saw the Seahawks clap them, and then they got in there and lost, and now they get to verse the Seahawks. I totally understand where John is coming from. John picked the Rams plus the 1 point, basically a pick'em line. I am going to pick the Seahawks to win and cover. Titans at Packers. Green Bay is favored by 3. Give me the Packers to cover. I don't really have much to say. I think that, not that the Titans are fake, but I think that the Packers are a much better team despite I feel like the Packers are at a different level than the Titans, despite the Titans being good, if that makes sense. It's like different tier, like A and B tier. John is also picking the Packers to cover. Bills at Patriots. Patriots are eliminated from the playoffs. They have nothing to play for. I'm picking the Bills to cover. The Bills still have a long shot at the 1 seed, and I'm sure they would like to retain the 2 seed. So I will be taking the Bills to cover because also the Patriots are bad. John is picking the Patriots +7. So that wraps up the pick'em section. Just some NFL news, and it's really not much. I just want to talk about it. Zach Cunningham not being a Pro Bowler over Tremaine Edmonds is a travesty. Zach Cunningham leads the league in tackles, and he is a really good player on a really bad team. And Tremaine Edmonds, despite being better for the second half of the year, was like awful for the first half and injured. Like, not that injury should determine if you make it the Pro Bowl or not. If you play at a high level, you should be, but he wasn't good to start the year. Zach Cunningham is one of the best linebackers in this league. And it reminds me of when Darius Leonard was snubbed from the Pro Bowl in his rookie year when he was playing out of his mind. It's a travesty, honestly. Usually there's at least one Pro Bowl thing that just confuses me, and that was it. Now let's get back into the Steelers-Colts game, and we'll talk about my X factors and bold predictions. On offense, I'm picking Kevin Dotson. I think that against a really good Colts defensive line, that he is going to be important. I think that he's going to give the Steelers a spark that they desperately need on the offensive line, because last week they played really poorly. I'm hoping that him playing next to Villanueva is going to help the line in this game. And then on defense, I'm picking Alex Highsmith. He's been so close, and I think that going against a backup tackle should really help him in this game. I think that he could be a difference maker in this game because of it. So my bold predictions for this game are going to be that the Steelers rush for over 110 yards, which isn't really that bold. It doesn't sound like it because it's only 110, but for the Steelers it is, and it's against a really good rush defense. My second one is Alex Highsmith records 2 turnovers in this game, and then my third is that the Steelers get a 75-yard or more touchdown in this game. And that leads us to the score prediction. The Colts at Steelers, the Pittsburgh Steelers are underdogs by 2 points now, according to ESPN. I'm pretty sure Vegas has this as a pick'em game. But regardless, let's go with John's first. We'll explain John's. John is picking a oddity. He's picking a 16-16 tie and picking the Steelers +2. I love that. It's interesting picking a tie. I could see it happening. I mean, it's not out of the question with how good the Steelers defense has been. But I, however, am going to pick 19-6 Colts and the Colts cover. The offense has shown me nothing. I don't believe them against a really good defense like this. I'm sure they're going to have 3 turnovers on offense, the Steelers, and it's going to put them in a bad spot. While I think the defense is really good, I think they could hold the Colts under 20. I don't think the offense is going to be able to produce, and it's capped off by special teams missing a PAT with Matthew Wright, so that's how you get to 6, even though I predicted a 75-yard touchdown in the bowl predictions. So I think that will wrap up today's episode. If you guys have any questions, hit up our social media in the description below. You could hit us up anywhere. You could send us an email. You could hit us up on Twitter, Facebook, wherever you feel comfortable. We'll always be open to answering questions and interacting with fans. So make sure to check us out there as well and give us a follow. But you guys have been listening to the Stronger Than Steel podcast, Season 5, Episode 39. I hope you guys have a wonderful night, and let's go Steelers. Hopefully we see a win, even though I'm not that hopeful.
You have been listening to Stronger Than Steel podcast. Thank you for joining us today, and don't forget to check out our website listed in the description below.